Welcome to Hip Hop Now Podcast. If you're from the future, you know what to do. Get your ass out of here. Don't disrespect the legend. Hip hop is here to stay. Let's get right into the business.
What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas. This is a Hip Hop Now Podcast bonus episode brought to you by the supporters over at patreon.com/hip hop now. And if you would like to become a supporter of this podcast, visit the link in the description of this episode. It's really easy. You know what I'm saying? Big shout out to all the hip hop fans out there. 50 years of hip hop, whether you be brand new or you're old and crusty and just bitter than them, you know what I mean. Everybody is welcome. Sometimes the hip hop police is necessary, but not today. Not today. We got a very special episode for y'all, man, and this is really personal for me. Let me just put it that way, because as a hip hop fan, I have always searched for a variety in the music. Obviously, back in the days, early in the hip hop's history or whatever, 50 years of hip hop, the sound of the music was generally the same, even when it was regional, right? West Coast sound like West Coast, East Coast sound like East Coast, South sound like South, etc., etc. But as we reach 50 years of hip hop, we see how the music has evolved to honestly have what some would call subgenres, right? So let's just start like this. Prime hip hop, prime, the blueprint, the standard, the barrier you have to reach first when you call yourself a hip hop head is boom bap. That's where it all started. I'm not going to give you the history of hip hop. I have an episode all about that. But that is the barrier. That's prime, boom bap. And then we got into more like funk, laced hip hop and jazz based hip hop. And then you have your trap, you have your bounce, you have your P funk, G funk, all these different styles of hip hop. Throughout the years, which is pretty dope. And I've been a fan of most of it, to be honest, just because I prefer variety. I'd rather not listen to 200 hip hop artists and producers who produce based off the same exact blueprint. That's not what hip hop is. Hip hop is about being creative and looking for what's next, expanding the genre. And what's possible, not only with your lyrics and your delivery, but also production and production techniques like a Jay Dilla and some of the work you see from like Hit Boy and classics like RZA and Premier. You know what I'm saying? What DJ Quick does. So you see it across the board. You see all the different styles. And there was a point in time where I started to think, maybe this is it. Which wasn't a bad thing because we had enough styles of hip hop anyway. And even though I will say what I'm talking about today may not have influenced the genre as a whole, it has made a huge impact on the game where I believe there is some influence, but it's just not as blatant as you would expect. And that is Run the Jewels, Killer Mike, and LP. I'm a big fan of all four Run the Jewels, even though number 3, I ain't gonna lie, is probably the weakest out of the 3, but I think that was a whole different story as far as fatigue or whatever. But when Run the Jewels hit the scene, I remember just feeling like, wow, this is different, right? Familiar, but different. We know LP from Brooklyn. We know Killer Mike from Atlanta. We never thought that them two pairing together would mean anything monumental. Could be dope, right? But we didn't expect this. And just really quick, as a comparison, I remember when Jay-Z dropped Magna Carta Holy Grail. And there was a few tracks on there. I believe, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Pharrell produced that kind of had almost this electronic drum and bass kind of sound, right? And I thought it was cool, right? Because I liked it. It was like the type of records you make because you know you're going to perform them in a stadium. And you talk about Jay-Z, so of course. But there was something that was missing, right? And I think it was what was missing lyrically. Lyrically, it was the same thing, right? Braggadocious rhymes, king of New York hip hop talk, and we like that from Jay-Z, but it just didn't do anything at the end of the day for me. And I stumbled across Run the Jewels in 2013, and I was like, this is it, right? This is it. This is that sound combined with a little bit of a hip hop feel to it, right? Rhymes from Killer Mike that can come across as hardcore and conscious, right? And free. Same thing with LP. You know what I'm saying? And they just played off each other so well, along with this sound, that I was kind of blown away by it because it's exciting, right? It was something new. So again, Run the Jewels is one of my favorite groups, probably of all time. I think they deserve that kind of respect. If you've listened to their albums, you'll know why I say what I say. If you love that new Killer Mike album, you know why we love Run the Jewels. A lot of that is embedded in his bars and Run the Jewels. So really quick, let's just go over a little bit of the history and then talk about what's next and the album itself. So just a little background that I'm seeing here. From 2012, Killer Mike and LP combined forces on each other's solo albums. LP's album Cancer for Cure and Killer Mike's album Rap Music. And they wound up touring together. And according to their website, they liked it so much that they formed a group, right? Because they found a lot of things that was common beyond their birthdays being kind of close. But just that common love for hip hop, like real hip hop history, boom bap, the glory days, whatever it may be. And they decided to form a group called Run the Jewels, right? And in 2013, they dropped their debut album, For Free, which, if I'm not mistaken, wound up crashing the damn site that it was available for. 10 songs. Production included, obviously, LP, who produces, but also Little Shalimar and Wilder Zobi, and features Big Boy, Until the Ribbon Breaks, and Prince Paul on the album. Now, y'all know me, 10 songs, that's right up my alley. You know what I mean? Not too long, not too short. You just rock out and then you get out, right? Or you repeat, you hit that rewind, whatever it may be. And I just remember when this joint dropped, I was just like, man, this is crazy. This is new. Some of the standout tracks for me are obviously the title track, Run the Jewels, Banana Clipper featuring Big Boy, Job Well Done, Get It, 36-inch Chain. I could damn near name the whole album as standout tracks. It just was, to me, that dope of a record. And I think when you look at 2013, right, where you have Jay-Z dropping Magna Carta, Holy Grail, Kendrick, not that long either before that, had dropped Good Kid, Mad City, I believe. But hip hop was at a certain state where everything was cool and there was variety, but it was sort of like in a loop, right? Because as much as I love Good Kid, Mad City, in a lot of ways, it's not something that we've never heard before as far as the total package that the album was. It was great for its time. It's Kendrick's story. It's different beats. It's new. But there was a lot of nostalgia in how the album played out with all the skits. A lot of nostalgia with the features on there from Snoop to NC8 and stuff like that. Again, Jay-Z's kind of continuing that art gallery kind of vibe that Kanye was on, and he was on with Kanye with Watch the Throne, with Magna Carta Holy Grail. And Run the Jewels debut reminds me a lot of Camp Lo, right? And I'm just talking about impact on the game, because that's where we are, right? We can talk about how hot it is. We know how dope the lyrics are, but it's about the climate, right? The climate didn't call for an album like this, similar to Camp Lo. Camp Lo released their debut in, I believe, like 96. If you go back and look at 96, and not just the albums that came out, but just everything that was happening, the whole East Coast, West Coast thing, Pac, you know, a lot of the focus on hip hop was lyricism, dope beats, and rap beefs. Bars. But you know what I mean? Like, that was kind of like the climate. And there were a ton of classic albums. Like, some of your favorite artists had their best albums ever, from Redman to the Fugees to Tupac, right? And here's Camp Lo, relatively unknown group, in their debut, releasing something that sounds like nothing else that's out, right? It's a lot of soul and blaxploitation references, and that's the entire vibe. And it's a lot of wordplay, but it's wordplay that kind of reminds you of the early 90s as opposed to 96. I feel like that's what Run the Jewels debut album did at the time it released in 2013. It wasn't Jay-Z. It wasn't Kendrick Lamar or Drake or anybody else that was happening, but it was familiar, right? Yo, it's Killer Mike. Yo, it's LP. What? They're a group. Well, what is that going to sound like? And when you think about both artists and what their typical sound is, Run the Jewels did not match that. And I think it was better in a lot of ways, because it fit an aesthetic of the times where it's probably more prevalent now, right? Especially when you look at like AI generated images and videos, and the way people dress and the type of sounds they like, right? I Just Want to Rock, or We Just Want to Rock, whatever the name of that little Uzi Vert song is. But listen how that sounds, right? It doesn't really come across as hip hop, but it is. It is. You know what I'm saying? And I kind of feel like it's the same with Run the Jewels, right? On the surface, if you don't know the group, you never heard any of their music, maybe you never heard of them, or maybe you heard of them but never heard the music. If I tell you it's dope hip hop, chances are, depending on who you are, you're probably going to listen for boom bap type beats. What you don't expect is this like music that sounds like a scene from a movie like Blade, or and it was in the video game, but a video game like Cyberpunk, right? What is it, 2077, whatever it's called. Something so futuristic sounding, but it is a branch from hip hop's lineage that it doesn't seem like it's right, but it is. And I'm saying all this to say that I think what Killer Mike and LP have done had basically made their mark in the hip hop game in a major way that maybe some can't appreciate today. But on the 10th anniversary of the release of this album, I think it's extremely important to pay attention to what they've done, right? Because they've extended hip hop's life in a lot of ways, not single-handedly, but in a lot of ways, they've kept hip hop going with a fresh sound, which probably introduced new fans to the genre of music as a whole. That's kind of what we want as hip hop heads. We don't want hip hop to remain the same so much that it doesn't grow and it doesn't reach new fans. In a lot of ways, Run the Jewels and their sound and their combination of skill and history and passions for this hip hop game has basically helped hip hop in a lot of ways reach new audiences. And again, it hasn't turned hip hop into that. That's their sound. But in a lot of ways, trust me, it has influenced the sounds of hip hop that you like. So, 10 years of Run the Jewels, the debut album. What did you think when you first heard their self-titled album, Run the Jewels? Did you think, nah, this is not the Killer Mike and LP I want to hear? Did you love it? Are you late to the Run the Jewels party? Maybe you like Run the Jewels 4 that made you go back and listen to the other ones? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Let me know what your thoughts are. 50 years of hip hop. Subscribe to my podcast, not only here on YouTube, but also in audio form on your favorite podcasting platforms. And just know, if you enjoy this content, press the like button. If you want to hear more, subscribe. But more importantly, share it with people you know enjoy this kind of content. Until next time, y'all, I'm not a critic, I'm a fan. Peace.